Library computer, data being received. Working.
Fascinating. You're in the hands of an adolescent.
Hey, welcome to what will probably be my last reading report for June. And it has been a week or maybe 8 days since my last reading report. And I am saddened to report that in that time, I only got 2 books finished. And this happened in part because I'm watching Spider Noir on Netflix and it's really good. As horrible as Marvel superhero stuff has become since the release of Endgame in 2019, which was a wonderful way to end their story arcs. Um, they've finally done something good again. So if I may pause from recommending books to recommending a TV show, which seems like a horrible thing to do on a BookTube channel, well, Spider Noir is really good and really worth watching. The other reason I fell behind was I started to read a Western written in the 1980s, and I'm not going to give the title or the author because I couldn't get into it, and I lost several reading days trying to get into this book. Even though I like the main character, I thought he came up with a neat set of supporting characters, and there were a few good action scenes in it. But there was something about the prose that I can't identify that just didn't work for me. And there was a time in my life where I would soldier through a book no matter what to finish it. But life's too short. Eventually, I just gave up and set it aside. And as I said, I cannot put my finger on anything wrong with that book other than it just didn't click with me. So I'm not going to give the title or the author because I don't want to sound like I'm unfairly criticizing a book that, I could say I couldn't get into it and I couldn't tell you why. And someone else who enjoys Westerns, who picks it up and reads it, might have a great time with it. It's another reason I lost some reading time this week. Also, the podcast about Agatha Christie that Angela and I are listening to got into a series of episodes. We've reached a series of episodes where they're dealing with short stories, and so I had to read a bunch of Agatha Christie short stories so that Angela and I could then listen to those episodes together after she had also read the short stories. So there you go. That's my sob story. That's why there's only 2 books this week for this reading report. And here they are. It's Grey Fist by Maxwell Grant, actually written by Walter Gibson using the house name of Maxwell Grant. First appeared in 1935 in the Shadow magazine. The book you're looking at here, is the original pulp cover, but it's the paperback reprint that was coming out as part of a Shadow series in the 1970s, the books that introduced me to the pulp version of the Shadow. And this was a fantastic Shadow novel. I'd read it years ago. I reread it because the Shadowed Circle book club was discussing this one this past weekend in their Zoom meeting, and it was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it, just as I enjoyed reading the book that we were discussing. Now, the titular villain is blackmailing a number of businessmen into working for him. What he plans for his future crimes, what those plans might be, we never actually learn because the Shadow becomes involved, and the bulk of the book consists of the Master Crook and the Master Crime Fighter battling each other. Greyfist knows that he has to get rid of the Shadow before he can move on with whatever his nefarious plans otherwise are. But Greyfist doesn't take a personal role in gunfights. Instead, his mobster minions use a very clever plan, not only to capture 2 of the Shadow's agents, but to learn where the Shadow's secret sanctum is located. And this plan is surprisingly simple, but it makes sense, and it shows us right up front that Greyfist will be one of the Shadow's most dangerous foes. So the Shadow's lost a couple of his agents, or that he needs to now find and rescue them amongst everything else he needs to do. He's lost access to his sanctum, and he's pretty much got every gangster in New York look out gunning for him at the same time. Because about halfway through the book, there's an extended action scene in which the Shadow battles, as I said, just about every crook in New York City. There's a veritable army of murderous gunmen pursuing him through the city streets, while the Shadow is using one clever improvised tactic after another to fight back and to stay at least a half step ahead of his pursuers. It's an absolutely wonderful action scene. Walter Gibson was always good at action scenes. If you're hearing that noise, that's my dog, quote unquote, digging a hole in the bed next to my chair here. It is, Walter Gibson always wrote wonderful action scenes, and Sherlock, you're not going to dig a hole in the bed no matter how how much you try. Just lie down. There you go. Good dog. I would edit that out, but he would just make more noise. As those of you listening know, I've long since given up on getting Sherlock to be quiet while I make videos. He doesn't do the assigned readings I leave him either. He's a very disappointing dog. Gibson always does great action scenes, and this is really one of his best. And the climax involves the surprise reveal of the Grey Fist's true identity, along with several other unexpected plot twists. When it seems like the Shadow and his captured agents must be doomed, but not everything is as it seems. So we've got nonstop action, we've got clever plot twists, and we've got a strong villain that and all of this makes a top-tier Shadow adventure. I also finished The Uncollected Cases of Sherlock Holmes by Geoffrey Finch. And these are 8 short stories that, for the most part, are excellent pastiches. The author does a lot of things right, which made these stories enjoyable. He catches Watson's voice very well in the narration, and Holmes comes across as Holmes in most ways. I'll discuss a divergence from that in a moment. He comes across as Holmes in his brilliant detective... Holmes comes across as Holmes in his brilliant detective work. And the dialogue catches that late Victorian, early Edwardian vibe required to make the tales seem real. The cases often involve secrets that would hurt a person or a family if revealed, or in one case, there's national security reasons. So there's a nice justification for why they were never published and were hidden away after Watson wrote them. And there's a nice variety of mysteries. All of them have some nice plot twists and satisfying conclusions. I especially enjoy The Great Game, which involves Holmes investigating a circus to figure out which of the performers is really a Russian assassin. And the ending of that one reminds us that Watson is a veteran soldier who doesn't flinch in a gunfight. The author's obviously a fan of the original canon, and he respects the characters of Watson and Holmes. But I suppose it's inevitable that when we are dealing with Holmes, the man who never lived but will never die, and whom all Holmesians think of as a real person to a certain extent, that a reader might find interpretations of the great detective or Watson don't seem quite right within any pastiche. We all have our personal versions of Holmes locked within the Holmesian confines of our mind. In this case, the things I didn't care for, Finch takes one mention of Watson gambling from The Adventure of the Dancing Men, and he turns it into a major part of the good doctor's character, to the point where a reader might think of it as an addiction. And I will grant that in that reference, Watson talks about keeping his checkbook locked up. I think in Holmes's keeping, if I remember correctly, so he doesn't spend too much money on gambling. So there's room for this interpretation. But in the end, it doesn't strike me as true to Watson. I don't think a gambling problem for that stolid, good-hearted character would ever get that bad. Perhaps more importantly, though, the first story states outright that Watson sometimes embellishes Holmes' abilities when he records a case. In fact, it's explicitly said that Holmes' Sherlock scan ability, his ability to deduce details about a person by simply looking at them and picking up subtle clues, is an embellishment. And I admit I dislike this. The Sherlock scan is an important part of Holmes' brilliance and an important part of his universe. But all the same, Finch does a 95% correct job of writing pastiches that do feel like true Holmes adventures. My criticisms are of the your mileage may vary type, and many Holmesians will not be as bothered by them as I was, and overall, I really enjoyed reading this. And so that's it. The mere 2 books I've gotten done in the last week. And what am I reading now? Well, let's see. I just started Stargard by Andrea Norton, and her books are almost always a hit with me. I've read 1 or 2 over the years that didn't grab me, but I've enjoyed probably 96% of the books I've read by her. And I fully expect, I've read the first couple chapters so far of Stargard, and I fully expect to enjoy it enormously. On my serial app on my phone, which sends me 1 chapter a day, I have been reading media tie-in novels, and I finished the Thunderbird novels. I finished the Marvel novel series from the Marvel Comics novel series from the late 70s. So right now I'm going back and forth between Man from Uncle novels and Doctor Who novelizations from the Tom Baker era. And so I'm currently reading The Man from Uncle number 11, The Invisibility Affair. And as I've said before, there is no rational reason for me to do them as this 1 chapter a day on the serial reader app, other than I'm just enjoying myself reading them that way. And several months ago now, at a boring banquet I had to go to, I started reading The Count of Monte Cristo on my phone, and I decided to read that as sort of a serial as well, because it's a long novel, even though it's a superb novel. I've been enjoying it just as much as when I've read it in the past. It would take me a while to read it, and I didn't want it to get in the way of other things I was reading. So I've been reading it as a serial, but I don't have like a chapter automatically sent to me every day, and so keep falling behind on getting that done. And I think what I'm going to do is, after I finish Stargard, I'm just going to dive into The Count of Monte Cristo. I'm about halfway done, and finish reading that. And because it is the sort of book that reads more slowly for me than other books, and I don't skim books, I read them thoroughly, this might be responsible for me to have another just 1 or 2 book reading report the next time I do one. I also have a relatively new biography of Rudyard Kipling on hold at the library that I'm going to read, and that might slow down the total number of things I read as well. So I may have another 1 or 2 reading reports which are with a very low number of books. And I hope I don't get ostracized by that and everybody's okay with it. I do. I will do the best I can, but in the end, I want to read stuff I enjoy in a way I enjoy, and because the book's upcoming, I may not get as much read as I usually do. And so that's it for now. As usual, remember, I do not have many regular listeners and never expect to. I don't expect to be a big hit in the booktube circuit. There's just too many booktubers out there, and many of them do an excellent job and already have established audiences. So I will always have low numbers, and I'm okay with that as long as there's always a few of you who like my videos, who put that like in, so that I know there's a few people listening. I really love doing these videos and geeking out about my books. I wish I'd done it a long time ago. And I just need, so that it's not just me feeding my own ego by doing these videos, I just do need a demonstration that there are some of you listening. So if you like this video, hit the like button and let me know. And if you have any comments about the stuff I've read or the stuff I'm reading, or any recommendations for something you think I would enjoy reading, please let me know in the comments. Do not comment just for the sake of commenting. I'm not quite that emotionally needy, but if you have something to say, don't hesitate to comment. And that's it for now. Thank you all for listening.